Good morning, everyone. How are you? Good. Hope we all got our mojo working, like Gary's. Welcome to Gary Smith's Celebration of Life. Anyone can Google Gary Smith EDA and get more than 250,000 hits about the industry analyst. And it's true. Gary has been described as a visionary, an authority, the single most important prognosticator in EDA. And certainly today, you're going to hear many examples of his impact in the industry. However, we're here today for other reasons. Gary Smith, husband and father, grandpa and brother, truth seeker and friend. My name is Sean O'Kane, and I'm very, very honored to be asked to officiate today's program. So we'll have about 4 to 5 guest speakers, and then we'll open it up for additional comments from the audience. And please keep them brief because, we'll have many people coming up on stage. Then we'll try to wrap it up around 11:45 or 12. If you haven't done so already, put your mobile phones on mute. And for those who would prefer to give a more private message to the family, our video crew will be set up in the back of the room for about 15 or 20 minutes to record your private message so Lori, Kate, and family can have that forever. So this is a celebration of Gary's life, and as Lori Kate says, he'd be bored if it was all about how great he was. He wants jokes and he wants funny stories. In the Pulitzer Prize-winning play, Our Town, Thornton Wilder tells an outwardly simple story about an ordinary American life. This metaphysical play in 3 acts shows us life in the beginning, the middle, and end. And in the final act, a character named Emily has died and was given an opportunity to choose one day of her life to live over again, to return to Earth for one day. And she can't decide on the most special day of her life. She thought, maybe my 16th birthday. Maybe when I graduated from high school. Yeah, that'll be it. And she's told, no. Choose one unimportant day. Choose the least important day of your life, and it will be important enough. And isn't that true? Because it's the ordinary moments, the ones that don't show up on a Google search, that define an extraordinary life. I first met Gary just a few years back when I came over to Cadence through an acquisition. And here he was this icon in the industry, and I just knew him as this very interesting man, a very deep thinker, and with an incredible dry sense of humor. My kind of guy. So we share the same zodiac sign, Pisces, and our birthdays are just a couple of days apart, and we shared some very similar characteristics, which I always found interesting in talking with Gary. He was compassionate, adaptable, accepting, devoted, highly sensitive, and imaginative. Born in Stockton, California in 1941, in a great town in San Joaquin County, Stockton was one of the richest agricultural regions and dairy regions in California. It was a very, very diverse town back then, but it's not the same town as what Gary grew up in the 40s. And he was very proud to be from Stockton as a 5th-generation Californian. But also, he was very happy to get up and get on with life into the world. So today, the city of Stockton is bankrupt, and it's the most populous city in the nation to go bankrupt. And in Gary's wonderful humor, he would say, Stockton is so broke, it makes Honey Boo Boo look like the lifestyles of the rich and famous. He also said, Stockton is so broke, Lindsay Lohan refuses to shoplift there. So that's Gary's sense of humor. But because of his iconic status, many of us knew and know the impact he has made and will continue to make in the EDA industry. We know about his passion for the industry, his insight and mentoring of small companies, and we've seen firsthand the dedication to everyone's success using the best methodologies. And we all have benefited from his business acumen. But where did it all come from? Well, one can't help but think about and make the connections of his success in the EDA industry and what Gary himself described as his single most important influence in his life, the United States Naval Academy. This mission statement includes the objective to develop oneself morally, mentally, and physically, to develop the mind and character to assume the highest responsibility, to be a person of integrity, to stand for which is right, to tell the truth. And man, could Gary tell the truth. He didn't mince words, and he loved the debate. He loved the challenge. He wanted people to think differently, and he just loved the debate. Which brings me to Frank Schurmeister. So, I'm kidding. Some of you, Lori Kate says, oh no, he loved debating with Frank. I mean, they were like this. It was perfect relationship. So seeking the truth could have been seen as a theme in Gary's life. In fact, as a student at Lincoln Junior High in Stockton, he would frequently go to the local library, to read history. He was a history buff. And once he told the librarian that he thought he read every history book in the library. And she managed to find him one book that he hadn't read, Biography of Genghis Khan. Apparently, this is the book that influenced Gary's burgeoning sense of humor. Okay. Lori, you told me that was a true story. He loved philosophy, both Eastern, Western, and was known to some as Serenity Smith. And his former wife was a Catholic, and they both converted to Judaism. And from there, he thoroughly studied Chinese history and Eastern philosophy. He became a Taoist and a student of Buddhism. So whatever happens in the end, I think he's covered. He was a deep thinker with an amazing compassion. He was selfless, spiritual, and very focused on his inner journey. And perhaps his compassion was inherited when he called his grandfather his hero. One of Gary's favorite stories was the way his grandfather fought against putting the Japanese in concentration camps in World War II. The Japanese had settled along the banks of the Sacramento River, and the land was useless to the farm conglomerates because of the flooding. But the Japanese grew rice, and so the flooding was perfect for them. Unfortunately for them, once the flooding was controlled with dams, their land became the best farmland in California. And that turned the concentration camp movement into a big land grab by the conglomerates. However, in the end, the only thing his grandfather could do was to buy the land that was taken from the Japanese. Then after the war was over, he gave, not sold, but gave it back to the Japanese family that owned it before their internment. He always went to their home every Christmas and enjoyed their great food. And that's part of his compassion. His compassion and unconditional love for his family was a guiding focus. His tremendous love for his dear wife, his children, and grandchildren remains. He was so proud of his granddaughters, and he used to say that kids and he were on the same mental level. And his son has Lori Kate's looks, but Gary's rhythm and humor. In fact, a couple of months ago, I think it was, Lori said, when Gary was a little under the weather, his 9-year-old son, Casey, got him a card picturing a puppy with big eyes and sad eyes. And inside it read, "Get your ass out of bed and get well." The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree there. Gary's intellectual curiosity didn't stop with philosophy, religion, or history. He was a musician from an early age. Perhaps this runs in the family too. His father was a trumpet player. Gary started playing drums in the 7th grade and then went on to stand-up bass. And it was all about the bass. During his time in the Naval Academy in Maryland, he played in the jazz bands as well. And then for his 50th birthday, his daughter Tammy decided he needed a hobby, and remembering his band days, bought him an electric bass. So he started a blues band, and that entrepreneurial spirit. Once again, he played bass guitar for the Los Gatos Blues Band and was also a member of the Full Disclosure Blues Band, which debuted, I think, at DAC in 2001. So, Gary he was a veteran, a Vietnam veteran of 4 tours. I don't know how many people knew that. He was a cancer survivor, a musician, a husband, a father, a grandfather, a methodologist, an evangelist, a straight shooter, a man with unconditional love, a pessimist, oversensitive, intuitive, selfless, idealistic, compassionate, patient, impatient, sincere, and dedicated. And Lori Kate says, Gary was my best friend, husband, and soulmate. So in the end of Thornton Wilder's Our Town, when Emily returns from her one day back on earth, and she feels distressed about the fleeting nature of life, and she is comforted, however, when she is told, well, we all know that something is eternal. There's something way down deep that's eternal about every human being. And part of that eternal something about Gary is the joy and love that lives on in each and every one of us. The extraordinary impact of a man who was anything but ordinary. All right? That's me. Thank you. Now I'd like to bring up another man with rhythm and a great mojo, Mr. Jim Hogan, right here.
You know, I've spoken at a lot of things over the years, and this is going to be a hard one because we're talking about a man that I cherished as a friend, a colleague, and God, Cooley, where'd you get those pants? Those have been on a tour of Vietnam 4 times. Okay, all right. So joining me today, we're going to have a little, multimedia deal. Grant's joining me. Grant's from Bethel Island. So if you know Stockton, south of Stockton, there's a street called Chartered. It's also called Highway 4. It runs east and west. And just west, about 10 miles down the levee, is Bethel Island. So this guy came from Bethel Island. So my grandpa actually was a riverboat guy in Stockton. Stockton's deep water port. It's terminus for the San Joaquin Valley. The railroads come in there, put the stuff in the boats, and sends it off to nowadays China. And we trade TVs for that. But anyway, so Stockton, San Joaquin is very much, or a lot like, in many ways, the Mississippi Delta. Interesting enough, it sort of draws the same kind of people and the same kind of music. So Gary, he loved the blues. You heard him doing Got Your Mojo Working. He had a bunch of favorite songs. Pride and Joy, which we heard a little earlier, heard Yardbirds Rolling and Tumbling, which are all songs that Gary knew pretty well, sang them in his own unique way. And then, so the song, we like to do one song for you, then I'll do my stories and see what you guys think. So the song is in the key of G, right? And in the old days, that's why he's going to go get another guitar, because he tuned it different. So in the old days, guitars weren't the lead instrument. In the old days, banjos were the lead instrument. They're tuned in open G. And so all those old blues guys didn't know how to tune a guitar, so they could tune them like banjos. And so Grant's tuned his guitar like a banjo. We're going to do Rollin' and Tumblin'. So Rollin' and Tumblin' it's one of those classics. Everybody's covered it. The words are different. Everybody that covers this song has a different bunch of lyrics. But the guy that usually gets the credit is Hambone Newburn Heading. So he was from Mississippi. Oh, my Lord. What a wild guess. And anyway, supposedly, first time he played it was 1913. Okay. So he finally got around to recording it in 1926 or 29 down in Atlanta, of all places. And then the famous Robert Johnson covered it. Robert Johnson gave up his soul on the Crossroads, covered it in 1936. And probably most recently, the one everybody knows is Eric Clapton's version. And he's covered on 2 albums, the acoustic album and Playing with Mr. Johnson album, which, I might have on my iPhone. So we thought we'd play it. And what I'd like everybody to do is once it gets going, and Lisa's going to help me with this, but I want everybody clapping like a minute. We're in a Baptist church. Where's Ron? Ron knows how to do a Baptist church. And so let's get it on. Go ahead, Grant. Clap. People got to have rhythm. Well, come here, baby. Sit on your daddy's knee. Yo! Oh, come here, baby. Sit on your daddy's knee. And I'll tell you how they treated me. Rolling and tumbling, man, it's been all night long. It's a rolling and tumbling, it's been all night long. And then I woke up, everything was gone. Now we lost our friend, we lost our dear friend gone. And we lost our friend, our dear friend is gone. And Lord, I hope I get to see him later on. Thank you. Thanks, Grant. Well, I got a couple stories. First story is the guy was dedicated, man. He was not feeling too well this spring, and we always get together before DAC, a couple weeks before DAC, compare notes. He tells me I'm an idiot, and I should quit spewing that marketing bullshit. And I tell him, yeah, well, I wish you knew something. And so anyway, he didn't make it. He had to cancel, right? He had to cancel. He wasn't feeling too good. And I said, okay, man, that's cool. Well, we'll catch up later. You get better. And you know what? The Friday before DAC, man, he phones me up and says, hey, we got to talk. I go, okay. And, so he went, he drove on over. We had lunch like we always do. He ate warmed up spinach. And I had a steak or something. But, but the truth is like he was on his game. I was telling you, man, he was on his game. He was letting him get away with nothing. I figure I had him this time, right? But, he was not giving up, right? And later on, Cooley has his panel. And, me and Gary usually sit next to each other because away from Cooley. And so Gary and I are sitting down on the end, and Gary was on his game, babe. He was on his game. So I was so proud of him, all that adversity, overcoming all that stuff he did to make the show. He was going to do the show, right? No matter what, The show must go on. And he knew that. Well, that's story number one. And where is Casey? Well, okay, this might be better without him here. So there was a slide or two in there. 2012, we had a presentation down in Monterey. You know, there's like 25 of us. Of course, we all know each other. But I can't remember it. John asked me to be the keynote speech. And I go, what am I going to, there's John over there. And I just, for life me, what am I going to tell 25 of my friends? They've heard all my BS before. But I came up with something. So Lori Kate, Casey, and Gary were sitting right there, right, like front row right there. And I'm starting, and then I sort of did a slide or two and had some marketing data that wasn't Gary's. And Casey goes, that ain't true. This 7-year-old kid sitting there, man, I'm getting a heckler in the front row. I kind of look at him and go, well, that's true. It's just not your dad's day. Okay, you know, I kind of went on 2 or 3 more slides. And he goes, that can't possibly be true. I go, who are you? Little miniature Gary Smith, that's who you are? Calling my BS on me? What the hell? So anyway, I got like 10 slides, right? And I'm trying to get through because I'm between, you know, the presentation and lunch or something. Everybody wants me over. And so he did it on every slide, that kid. He did it on every slide, man. It was like I was at the Laugh Factory or something, and I had a front row of, hecklers. So anyway, it dawns on me that this kid's probably going to be okay. Because he is, I think Sean said, apple doesn't fall from the tree. From this acorn will grow a mighty oak, I'm sure, right? And I wish he was here, because what I wanted to tell him, too, is there's going to be stories that he's going to want to hear. And I can guarantee you, I'll be here to tell him, and everybody else in here, we're going to owe that boy some stories. And it's going to be my pleasure to do it. And it's been my honor to speak today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim. I think it is appropriate to see John Cooley. Could you just stand up here, please? Just up to the front, and then look at this. Okay, you may sit down, John. Somewhere in East San Jose, there's this 56 Chevy missing a seat cover. I like it, though. All right. So Wally Ryan sent a note, and I just want to read it to you. And it was very kind. He was very sorry he couldn't be here. He said, I'm sorry I couldn't be there to celebrate Gary's life with so many of his friends. If I were there, I would probably start off by recalling some pearls of Gary's imparted wisdom and his jokes, his email jokes. Like, I thought I saw an eye doctor on an Alaskan island, but it turned out to be an optical illusion. Or one of Gary's favorites is a hole has been found in the nudist camp wall. The police are looking into it. Very dry, just dry. He said Gary was a delight to be around. He could see the humor in almost any diverse or adverse situation, and he loved to share a laugh with anyone interested in joining the group. Gary was also insightful, entrepreneurial, and a major help for the EDA industry. He provided valuable data so that the EDA startups could verify market sizes and opportunities and thus secure funding. He helped us all to understand how well or not so well we were doing in each segment of the EDA business. And he was the spokesperson relied upon by customers and financial analysts to understand our industry and the benefits it provides. Not only will we no longer have that independent spokesperson for our industry, but we won't have anyone who can always come up with something positive to say about a product announcement, press release, regardless of how questionable our product might be. I miss Gary very, very much, but my life has been enhanced by the 25 years I knew him and worked with him. Thank you very much, Wally Ryan. Right now, I'd like to bring up Gary's brother, Richard Smith, right here.
Boy, if I try to keep up with that group, I'm in trouble. I just want to let you all know that, Gary was the same as a young boy as he is and was just recently. He was a wonderful brother. I had some of my great times with Gary. Gary was someone who, and is somewhat unusual, knowing family relationships, that Gary and I were good friends. We did a lot of things together. Most recently, able to get together with him on a very periodic basis, having lunch and catching up on everything, so it was a wonderful relationship, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Great guy. He was born in 1941, as has been said before. He's 3 years younger than I am, and then my sister Susan was born in 1945. Susan and I looked a lot alike. Gary looked different. So over the years, one of the barbs that Gary and I always tossed at each other, my turn, was that Gary looked like the milkman. And anyway, as we grew up, he had a great imagination. There was things that he accused me of. One was I was supposedly one time he and I were in the backyard when we were youngsters, and I wrote in chalk on the fence. This is Gary's story. Chalk on the fence, and then handed the chalk to him, and then got my mother, said, Gary wrote on the fence. And of course Gary got in trouble for that. That was not true. All right. But that was one of his stories. He liked that one. In 1956, I joined the Naval Reserve under the Reserve for Officer Candidate program. In 1959, 3 years later, Gary headed off to the Naval Academy. I went on active duty in 1960, and Gary, of course, graduated from the Academy in 63 and went off in the Navy himself. He and I just missed. I got off active duty about the time he was getting on active duty, and so we went through that. He spent 6-7 years in the Navy, then got out of the Navy, and then went to join all of you folks. I got off active duty, went into the reserve, back into the reserve, and proceeded ahead. And he got out of the Navy as a lieutenant commander, and I proceeded on, and obviously became more senior than he was, which I reminded him of periodically, daily, periodically, and of course retired in 1989 as a captain. But I said, Gary, you're going to have to salute me now. And he looks at me and he said, Richard, I'm never going to salute you unless you get that R off the end of your designator. And he has never saluted me. He's a very consistent guy. Anyway, wonderful, wonderful person, as you all know. I've enjoyed life with him, and enjoyed Lori, Kate, Casey, super people. So thank you very much.
I'd like to bring up Daya Nadamuni. Daya?
where Gary Smith started, and it's been such a fun ride the whole time. I just have a few things I want to share. So, for the longest time, his password at Gartner was some variation of sick and tired. Oh, let me get to that. Okay. I'm short, so, we'll adjust this. Okay. Oh, can I hold it? Okay. So, it was sick and tired, and I was like, Gary, why sick and tired? I don't get this. And he's like, because I'm sick and tired of being told what to do and who to talk to and how long to talk to them for. Gary, he just went ahead and talked to whoever he liked for however long he liked and never cared about bureaucratic rules or anything like that. The other thing was, of course, this prescient and his predictive forecasting abilities. Now you all know why we have such amazingly accurate forecasts that came out both when we were all at Gartner DataQuest and now at Gary Smith EDA. It was the J factor. And sorry, I cannot tell you what that is because that's a trade secret. But his stories of the Talton engineers that really drove our seed forecast, all of that owes its magic to the J factor. Gary's had very creative writing and spelling abilities, which he often thanked the California public education system for, And the story that he always said was that Governor Pat Brown had apologized to his senior class in '61. So I will tell you that this caused, his writing was always rich, deep, but short and to the point. And with the exception of Carol Stoll, it caused quite a bit of head-scratching among our Gartner editors who really couldn't figure out how to interpret what he'd actually said because they weren't in tune with his style. But, that was Gary. And what can I say? For me personally, I have to tell you that Bangalore and Balanguru will never be Bangalore to me again, especially after that really memorable ASP DAC trip we had. By the way, that return flight was like over 14 and a half hours. And we spent most of the time talking about our families, Kim and Tammy and Rachel and Shannon, but most of the time was spent talking about this really wonderful person who had just come into his life. And that was you, Lori Kate. We actually went jewelry shopping for you the night before we got on the flight. Casey was just a gleam in the eye at that point. So our birthdays are just a few days apart, and so it was one cardinal rule that we always met sometime around our birthdays as often as we could. And we did that this year, too, at our favorite hangout in Santana Row. And Gary was running a little bit late, and so he got there and said, dang, I forgot your card. And I was like, that's okay. And because I knew I'd be seeing him again in a couple of weeks. And Lori Kate handed me this card yesterday, and it says, a little bird told me it was your birthday, so I ate him. Classic Gary, I've saved all the cards from the years. And the other thing, of course, is, we always had a fight over who would pick up the check. Because he said, he was officially retired, so he could pick it up. And I was like, no, I'm picking it up. This year, he turned away for a minute to talk to the wait staff, and I grabbed the check before he could do anything. He was just getting his second favorite cup of green tea. He'd carry out this time. Gary loved what he did. It showed every day in this, in the reports he wrote, the interactions he had with people. His tireless efforts for the industry, his encouragement, and his constant support of his team. We have Sharon, Mary here, and myself. He was our biggest supporter. He encouraged us in every way. For me, he helped me grow in my career at Gartner, in the industry, and most of all, he helped me grow as a person. From him, I learned to laugh a lot, live a mostly guilt-free existence, because thank you for the screw guilt stickers, Gary. He would hand them out at a drop of a hat. and to take life as it comes without stressing out over possible outcomes. But most of all, I have to be best friend for Gary.
Thank you, Jaya. Thank you very much. And we're going to bring up Lori Kate Smith, and then we'll open it up for comments, brief comments.
Thank you for coming today. It means a lot to me and the family. Thank you for making this such a colorful celebration of his life. Today has brought much laughter and a few tears. And that's what I wanted, and that's what Gary would have wanted. One of the things that I love most about Gary was his storytelling. What Gary loved to talk about most was his family. And I'd like to introduce you to the people that Gary loved the most. Tammy, and Kim, and Rachel. Can you guys just stand up? Casey's in the other room right now because, you know what, he's had a lot of adult time. And what I'd like to start with, though, is, because he's not here, but I want to show him, is I'd like you to help show Casey and his granddaughters how much you love to brag about them. How many of you have heard or seen pictures of more than 10 pictures or stories of Casey? And I'd like to introduce, this is Rachel, Gary's oldest granddaughter, and his daughter Kim. And this is Shannon and his daughter Tamara. What I'd like you to know, Rachel, is the storytelling started 19 years ago. How many of you have heard more than 20 stories about Rachel and Shannon over the years? He was so proud, and he loved you both so much. Thank you for letting everyone show you how much he loved you. Thank you. I know Gary's death came as a shock to all of you. Came as a shock to us as well. The week after DAC, 2 weeks before I started my sabbatical, Gary went to see his doctor, and he said Gary was in the best health that he had seen him in years, just like Jim had said. On Tuesday, June 30th, we got on the Grand Canyon Railroad for 2 days. Gary didn't feel well in the morning, but he was feeling better that night. And on Wednesday morning, he had a little breakfast, and Casey and I went out for the best hike of our trip. When we got back, Gary wasn't feeling well, but he didn't want to go see anyone, so we just all took a nap. By Wednesday evening, I called the paramedics. The initial diagnosis was just dehydration. Gary improved both in the ambulance and in the ER. They were just waiting for a room to open up, as they expected Gary to be released in a few days. Gary and I chatted on the phone, and I asked him if he needed anything. And he replied, "Just you and Casey." And those were the last words that he said to the family. Gary died shortly after that, in dignity, in no pain, and surrounded by his family. Next, there was Cooley. In retrospect, because you know that talking to Cooley is the easiest way to get the message out. Not that all of you believed it, but Cooley was convinced that because many of you had been on vacation for 9 days, that he couldn't send the email out on Monday because you wouldn't notice it. that you would be in a bad mood and not send any positive memories of Gary. I think they saw the email. Now, Gary would not have understood what all this fuss was about, and Jim and I are on the same level, because what I said is, what Gary would want to know is, why are we all together and there's no jam session? Jim, thank you. Thank you, Grant. Now, people typically had a strong opinion about Gary in both camps. One of the things that I admire most about Gary is that he didn't care either way. One clear exception was when Alberto gave him a compliment. Now, how many of you wouldn't be moved when Alberto gave you a compliment? Regardless of one's opinion of Gary, as Karen once said when she introduced him, if you don't know who Gary Smith is, you're in the wrong room. Gary's passion was engineering. What he cared most about was making it easier for semiconductor engineers to build their next chip. He considered himself, since his days at LSI, a design methodologist. He was passionate about discovering and evangelizing the next design methodology, whether he was a few years or a few decades ahead of that change. Gary never withheld his expertise from anyone, as perhaps only the startups and the PR teams know. Gary gave free advice to the startups, advising them on business plans, on marketing and engineering talent, and tool features. Now, the companies, whether startups or the big EDA companies, who worked the best with him, or as Sean said, were the ones who shared with him but also challenged him. When he came home from a meeting, it was all about who had given him a hard time that day. What intrigued him was learning about how the tools were being used, and whether or not you agreed with his opinion, you knew that Gary's opinion and his agenda was never based on personal gain. Gary didn't take many things seriously, and sarcasm was a frequent companion. The first time that Pfister and Gary met, Pfister ran across the room to shake his hand and said, "I've heard so many good things about you, and I look forward to really working with you." When Gary noticed that he didn't know who I was, he said, "I'd like to introduce you to my wife, Lori Kate. She works for you." I actually did really feel sorry for someone at Cadence at that point. More people than I could count have sent cards, texts, Facebooks, voicemails, stopped over, tweets. We have been overwhelmed. We've been really moved. And I probably haven't read half of what you've sent so far. The Harker community, where Casey goes to school, has responded in force, supporting both Casey and I. Spending time at Casey's school functions were some of our best memories, and so many people at Harker got to know Gary. It gives me great comfort to know that so many of you are looking out for Casey. Some people have asked how they can support Casey, and Casey shared that he does appreciate when his peers acknowledge what happened. And then, as any typical 9-year-old, he'll probably change the topic to Minecraft. Time with his friends has always been so important, and he looks forward to seeing many of you again soon. For the industry folks, please continue to send the memories to Cooley. He doesn't plan to publish the memories for a few weeks. And one thing I will also ask for is for your recipes for your best weekday meals, because Gary was our cook, and I got to figure that one out. There will probably be more vegetables in the diet, though. Let me be clear that what you see all here today, I had very little to do with. On Tuesday, my mom said, "Do you mean we just show up?" And that's what my family and I did. The San Jose State Scholarship that has been established would have greatly moved Gary. It helps, not only does it help underprivileged students become engineers, but each recipient gets a free ticket to DAC. Gary always felt that one of the most important experiences at DAC was the speaking with other engineers. And what a great opportunity for these recipients to go. When I asked about thanking people, Michelle gave me some great line that as a former funeral director's wife, that it was not appropriate to thank the people who had put this on. I think the real reason is that if she had put together a sign with everyone's name on it who had made this event happen, it would have been that big. Please accept my heartfelt thanks on behalf of the family. We really do appreciate all that you've said and all that you've done. And please let me stop and remind you about just how special EDA is. It's not the companies who put this celebration on, it's the people who came. The EDA community rallied one more time for one of their own, as they have done and will continue to do over and over again, without any concern for which company that they work for. This doesn't happen in other industries. And I've had more practice this week asking for help and accepting help than I've ever done before. And the experience has been more amazing than I could have ever imagined. I was blessed to spend more time with Gary than anyone else in the last decade. And I was the lucky one. Gary loved me unconditionally, and I know that I receive more love than most people receive in any relationship. We share the most wonderful son ever, and I gained this amazing family whom I look forward to growing old with. Sure, I am sad at times. I miss Gary. He was my soulmate. Yet I can honestly and heartfeltly say that I have no regrets. As the cliche says, it is better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all. When I'm sad, I remember that Gary loved me with all his heart. He wouldn't want us to be sad. I feel him looking down at me and smiling all the time. Now, I don't have a clue about how I'm going to manage moving forward. But what I do know is that I'm not alone. I have all of you. As Mother Teresa once said, I know that God wouldn't give me anything that I can't handle. I just wish he didn't trust me so much. And let's remember why we came here together today. What Gary would want us to think about is, how can we love our family more? How can we live life more fully? How can we make life easier for engineers? That's what Gary would want us to remember. Thank you.
And we have time to open it up for just a few other comments, or if someone would like to come up, maybe Mr. Gianfani. Mike. Oh, thank you. It's a fine Irishman right here. Mike Gianfani. Buongiorno, signore. Piacere. Questo mi piace. All right.
Thank you. So, yeah, my name is Mike Gianfania. I've been in EDA and semiconductor for many, many years. And like a lot of you in the room, I had the privilege and the pleasure of making sure that whatever I was working on, Gary liked it and put it on the top 10 his must-see list for DAC. So that's something we all worried about every year. So time is short, so I'll be brief. Just a couple comments. I guess the first one is, I'm a little colorblind. I think this is orange. I see a lot of other shades of orange in the room, but I've heard the expression, orange is the new black. So I think we redefined it here today. There's just one other thing I want to mention. It's a postscript to something Jim Hogan mentioned. That EDPS conference, I was there in the front row. It was dinner time. Your keynote was about dark silicon, whatever that is, but you would talk for about 20 minutes. And I don't know if you remember the punchline. After all those interruptions, you finally said, "Kid, you're killing me." And I think he stopped then. So that's my story. Thanks.
We have another speaker. How about Mr. Fuller? Oh, no, Andrew, please.
So I come from Palo Alto, where there's an auditorium full of people who were just stunned to see Gary's picture this morning and to realize that after 15 years, he wouldn't be joining our meetings anymore in the semiconductor roadmap. And I think all of us really remember Gary for all the reasons that have been said so far, but also for some really deep lessons. I mean, I think the first lesson was, make things happen. Your vision, the best way to predict things as a visionary is to make them happen. So, who among us really understood ESL when it was first in the roadmap, or the intelligent test bench? But, the intelligent test bench, according to Gary, was done 3 years ago. And now our challenge is executable spec for 2027. So that's a task we all have to work on, I guess. And then be bold. So, he was the face of the design cost model, which was just an amazingly concrete way of showing the concrete value of the industry that he loved so much. And third, I think above all, know what's really important. So for so many years, 3 times a year, a bunch of semiconductor technologists would hear about Lori Kate and Casey, and somehow I thought Casey would be about 6 feet tall, but he's not quite 6 feet tall. But anyway, I mean, clearly when Gary wasn't there, it was because family came first, and so for the folks in Palo Alto and myself, thank you to family, Lori Kate and Casey for sharing Gary with us, and we will miss him.
Once again, for folks that would like to share a private message, you can do that with our video crew. Will be in the back of the room.
Hi, I'm Aparna Day, and I have known Gary for over 15 years now. I have the privilege of knowing him, and also I had the chance to work both with Gary and Lori Kate at Cadence. I'm very grateful for his friendship, his kindness. I have had the chance to meet him often, frequently for lunches, and get his guidance and his wisdom and his knowledge about this industry. He introduced me to EDPS, and he's been a great supporter of EDPS conference all these years, and I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Feel free to speak right into the mic here.
Thank you. So just like he pointed out, is how I thought of Gary. I always, so I know him from EDPS for about last 20 years or so. And I think Gary was like an iceberg, right? When I first met him, he was very unassuming and very nice guy, but there's much more to him. Just like an iceberg, you don't see 2/3 of it. And I think his ability to call bullshit, right, in a very nice, smiling way that you won't even know how to react to it. So when we were talking to him about EDA in the cloud, right, and putting some EDA tools in the Amazon, he would just shake his head saying there are not enough engineers in the world, even if you make tools for free, who can use it and make it worthwhile for the companies to do. So that's something he didn't believe in, and he and I always went back and forth. And to think I'm still in disbelief that he is gone. I still feel that Gary is in the clouds looking over us, and and I hope he'll be guiding us, with things that we are doing in our profession and for his family also. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gloria Nichols, and I have the 9 things to like about Gary Smith, and it's 9 in honor of Casey's age instead of 10. So number 9 is his happy attitude. For example, giving us the okay through Larry Kate here to dress and be cheerful today. Number 8 is his eternal youthfulness. He defied his age. He started a business when others would be thinking about how they retire, right? He didn't even wear reading glasses until he was in his 70s. There you go. His initiative. When Gartner terminated the EDA group, what does he do? Look for something else, he just rebuilds it, bringing and saving his entire team and in many ways saving our industry from having a hole there. His music, which has been talked about, and I got the pleasure of hearing every year at DAC for many years. Number 5, his stories about EDA and semiconductor. Amazingly, he brought it to life, and amazingly, for all the years I met with him, he never once repeated a story, which is pretty impressive. His stories about his family, and of course, we got to hear about his children, and got to watch Casey grow up, as Lori Kate had mentioned. Number 3, Gary had the sense, persistence, and good luck to marry Lori Kate, and it was an inspiration to hear about how much he loved her over the years. He had so many special stories there for you. Number 2, Gary's joke list. How many of you were on Gary's joke list? And you know what? Not one of my jokes ever made it to be posted. Jeez, I tried. And number 1 was Gary was a good man. He was trustworthy and honest to the core. And I have just one thing borrowing from Joan Baez to honor him, just the forever young that just fits him. Gary, may you build a ladder to the stars and climb on every rung. May you stay forever young.
So I'm Rob Aiken. I had just a Stockton update for you because my son's been living there for the last 6 years, and he says the thing that's most important is to learn the difference between a gunshot, a firecracker, and a car backfiring. Once you've got those down, you're good. But I guess the thing that I want, everybody has given all these amazing Gary stories. The thing that I liked about meeting with Gary is that he was very concise, so we could get the business portion of whatever we were talking with done in about 30 seconds, and then we could get on to important things and talking about Casey's soccer, what was going on with the family, and old stories on various subjects. So I'm really going to miss him. Thanks.
Well, thank you all, and once again, stick around and tell some more stories. And again, if you want to have give a private message on camera, we can do that, and we'll be here for about 15 or 20 minutes, and we'll do that in the back of the room if you'd like to give a message to Lori Kate and the family. So for the Smith family and everyone here, thank you so much for being here.